And so if you're in a greenhouse effect and if you have unlimited vegetation because plants grew to an incredible size. When the Siberian archaeologists were working in the Siberian coal fields, they found quick frozen mastodons or mammoths. In fact, they found millions of them. In fact, there are entire islands of Siberia that are made of nothing but sand and the bones of woolly mammoths. That's all the islands are made of. But when they went out there, they found frozen into the tundra and into the ice plume plants. Do you know what a plume plant is? A plume plant is those, you ever go through a subdivision where they have those fancy, look like sea oats or something? It's like a plume. It's just a thing sticking up with a feathery top. And they're about this high, or maybe a little taller. Do you know how tall they are in Siberia? 90 feet tall. Fast frozen in the tundra. How did they grow to be 90 feet high? How did animals grow to be 160,000 pounds, 100 feet long? How did they have enough food to eat? One woolly mammoth would take 700 pounds of vegetation per day. And there was one herd found in Siberia where 5 million of them were all squashed together. That, my friends, is a lot of vegetation. Where willow trees only grow an inch a year in Siberia today. How did they do it? Well, let's look at Genesis. And what I want to show you is just 3 things this morning. And all of them point to the same truth. And the truth is that we need to rejoice in our Creator God. Don't be afraid when someone brings up dinosaurs. In fact, if they bring up dinosaurs, jump on it and witness to them and say, I'd like to tell you about dinosaurs. They're mentioned in the Bible. They're created by God. And they, as well as the creatures present and the creatures in the future, all point to our infinite Creator God.
Is it possible that environmental conditions of past ages favored the development of giants? Certainly we know from fossil evidence that some species, like dinosaurs, grew many times larger than they do today. A supporter of this thought-provoking and controversial theory is Dr. Carl Bohr.
Optimal genetic expression means the best that the organism has within the DNA is expressed because of favorable atmospheric conditions.
Based on fossil evidence, trees like the California giant sequoia grew much larger than they do today. One theory explains this by proposing that environmental conditions in the distant past were more conducive to gigantic growth.
Under these described conditions, plants and animals would live longer, be much larger, and that's precisely what we find in the geologic column in the fossil record. Plants were much larger. All living systems were larger. We have animals that today have an 8 or 9 foot stature with a 16 to 20 foot stature. We have insects such as the dragonfly. Today, the dragonfly has perhaps a 4-inch wingspan. In the fossil record, his counterpart, Meganeuropsis, had up to a 5-foot wingspan. Everything was larger in the past.
I'm of the opinion that under better atmospheric conditions, people were living not only longer, but they were taller, much taller.
Giants and dinosaurs could not exist today as they did in the past because the atmospheric conditions simply will not permit it.
We had a greater ozone layer at the time prior to the flood. At the time of the flood, it was diminished to about 1/7 of what it was at that time, and therefore, life on this earth as we know it no longer has the same life expectancy as it did at the time of the flood.
A thinning of the ozone layer means less protection from the ionizing radiation from space, and less protection for plants and animals.
Being interested in Earth's original conditions, after 35 years of research on those parameters, I've attempted to reconstruct that context. And in so doing, I've had our engineers build a biosphere that doubles the atmospheric pressure, that increases the electromagnetic energy, that increases the ratio of oxygen, but not to the level of toxicity, that eliminates ultraviolet radiation, etc. And the experiments that we've run have been very gratifying. In our controlled scientific experiment, we have measured the effects of a pulsed electromagnetic field on biological systems. We have these pacu piranha fish that normally at 3.5 years of age are about this size under optimal conditions. Yet we have them now in excess of 20 inches, weighing just under 5 pounds each. Under these controlled conditions, we have succeeded in producing giantism at an accelerated rate.
Taken at face value, the research looks persuasive, though it has not yet been replicated by other scientists.
The conclusion in the tradition seems to be fairly clear that gigantic beings were existing at one time, and that as human history developed, or as physiological, emotional, spiritual changes took place, those beings who survived seemed to be of a smaller gene pool. But the possibility that there were other strands of humanity, as it were, seems to be almost explicitly stated in the Bible itself.